Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Yevamos Lamed Beis. We are starting right at the Mishnah, which is 9 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Shnei Achen, you have 2 brothers, Nesui Nishtei Achayos, who are married to 2 sisters, Ruvain to Rachel, Shimon to Leah. Umeis Echad Mehen, Ruvain, Rachel's husband, passes away. Now Shimon, although he's a potential Yavam, cannot do Yibum to Rachel due to the fact that she is his relative. She is his wife's sister, Achos Isha, right? Because he's married to Leah, Rachel's sister. What happened next? Shimon's own wife, Leah, passes away, which technically enables him to marry Rachel. She's no longer his living wife's sister. Can he proceed and marry Rachel? No. She is asur on him forever. Due to the fact that when she became available for Yibum, at the point of Reuven, Rachel's husband's death, when she presented herself to Yibum, she was unable to marry Shimon. She was incompatible with Shimon. She was Shimon's wife's sister. So although that situation changed, it does not affect, it does not benefit Rachel, it does not change her status. Once asur, always asur. Pshita, of course, it's obvious. Didn't we already discuss this halacha way back on Daf Lamed? And in fact, that Mishnah was even a greater chiddush than this one. You see over there we had 3 brothers. Reuven and Shimon were married to sisters, and Levi was married to a stranger. He wasn't part of that sisterhood arrangement. And the Mishnah tells us, when Reuven dies, leaving behind his wife Rachel, and at that point Shimon, of course, cannot approach Rachel, because at that point she is Shimon's wife, Leah's sister, right? His Achos Isha. Although that may have changed later on, it doesn't really help Shimon, because once asur, always asur. So even if Shimon's wife passes on later on, doesn't matter. And there we're speaking that there was another brother on the scene. There was Levi, who had no issue, b'miyabim Rachel. Right? So it's actually a better case, because at the time of Rachel's nefila, she was able to be misyabim, although not to Shimon, but she was available to Levi. Still, we say that since Shimon could not approach Rachel, since he was asur at that point, even if later on his situation changes, it stays asur. And therefore asks the Gemara, look, you've already told me this halacha of ne'es rasha achas. You already told me this. And you've even illustrated it in a greater chiddush type of situation, where there are 3 brothers and the Isha, Rachel, is going to get married to Levi. Still, once she is asur on Shimon, it stays asur on Shimon forever. So certainly in our case, where all you have is Reuven and his brother Shimon, there's no other alternative. When Shimon can't be miyabim her, at that point she is sort of yibum disabled. There's nobody there to take her. So of course in this case, the din isur that applies to her on account of being Shimon's wife's sister will stick forever. Pshita, of course. Even in the first case, in the previous illustration, back on the Lamed, where there are 3 brothers, and Rachel, although she can't marry Shimon, but she's not been pushed away entirely from this household. She can have Yibum done to her through Levi. Amris, law, you still tell me, well, no, she's off limits for Shimon. In this case, where when Shimon can't approach her, she's totally pushed aside from this household. She can't be addressed by anybody here. There's nobody here to be miyabim her. Of course, that stigma, that status should stick. Like Koshkin, isn't it obvious that it would stick? So why do you need both cases? And once you have the first, of course, you don't need the second. Answers the Gemara. The Tana of the Mishnah, Tana Barish. Actually, first he learned and presented this most recent case where you have only two brothers. In this case, since at the point of her nefila she is unable to have yibum, that Isser stays forever. That was the first halacha that he learned and taught. And actually, the other case where there are three brothers, it appeared to the Tana that it would be mutter. So eventually, when Shimon turns around and becomes mutter to Rachel due to his wife's passing, he can maybe yabam her, because the fact is, Rachel was not precluded entirely from yibum. She was still yibum and able to, although not to Shimon, to Levi. So she stays in the game. Visharya, he figured it would be mutter, and he was moderate. And then the Tana changed his mind, decided, even that case appears to be asur. Once she's asur on Shimon at the initial point of nefila, it stays. And because it was dear and precious to the Tana, the other halacha which he arrived at through toil and effort was more precious to him, and therefore he learned it first. He taught it first. Now once he taught that one, this most recent Mishnah here is sort of superfluous. It's less of a chiddush. If you know that, of course, there are only two brothers, and of course when the Isser is applied to one of the brothers, who's the only potential Yavam, that Isser sticks. So why is there a need to even mention it? The answer is a Mishnah lo yizazam im kaima. A Mishnah which was learned and taught doesn't get deleted, stays right there, and therefore we don't tinker with it. The bottom line is, it's all really one and the same concept. If the Yevama is asur on a certain brother at the point of her nefila, that initial Isser sticks forever. Tana Rabbanan. So we have Reuven and Shimon, married to two sisters. Reuven passes away, leaving behind Rachel, who is actually Shimon's brother's wife, right? So he's sister-in-law on that account, and she's also Shimon's wife's sister. So she is Eishes Ach, his brother's former wife, his brother's widow, and also Achois Isha, sister of his living wife, Leah. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in a brayso, Ba'aleh, let's say Shimon lives with Rachel as married. What happens now? How many offenses did he commit? He committed two wrongs. One Eishes Ach and one Achois Isha. Divrei Rabbi Yisi. Rabbi Shimon Omer no. He's only guilty of being over Eishes Ach. We don't add Achois Isha. It would seem that Rabbi Yisi holds two Isurim can sort of pile up. You can apply one Issa to the other. You can combine two separate Isurim as one. Rabbi Shimon says no, it's only one or the other. Which one? Eishes Ach, my brother's wife. That's this Bryce. Vatanya. We have another Bryce. So where Rabbi Shimon Omer, it's one Chiv, it's one Isser, but you know which one? Wife's sister, Achois Isha. Which one is it? Achois Isha or Eishes Ach? Answers the Gemara, depends how it happened. It depends on the sequence of events. Like Kasha, the answer is Kan Shanasa Chai. In the second brayso, where Reb Shimon says he's only guilty of Achois Isha, speaking where first, you know who married? Chai, the surviving brother. Shimon married Leah first, which makes Rachel, wherever she is, the unmarried Rachel, turns her into an Achois Isha. She's my sister's wife. So that Isser came first. And only afterwards the departed brother, this is a reference to Reuven, did he marry Rachel, which now turned Rachel into Eishes Ach. But that came second, then it's too late. Rachel has already been considered Achois Isha. So that's the first one in. That's the one that sort of fills her to capacity. She's saturated. She's considered Achois Isha, and she no longer has any place for any additional Yisurim to land on her and be applied to her. That's Reb Shimon's approach. Ein Isser Chalal Isser. You can't have one Isser applied to the other. So whichever one gets into the door first, that's the one that sticks. So in Brisa number 2, it's only Achos Isha because that's what happened first. First Shimon married Leah, turning Rachel into Achos Isha, and that's it. So even though she proceeded and married Reuben, and she became Eishes Ach, that doesn't get added to the previous Isser, which fills it to capacity. Whereas in the first Brisa, we consider her Eishes Ach, that's speaking Kansha Nosa Meis. First, Reuben married Rachel. She now turns to Shimon, she's considered to Shimon and Eishes Ach, so that's the first Issa through the door. And only then did Shimon marry Leah, which turned Rachel into Achos Isha, but since she's already Asra on account of Eishes Ach, that's the only Issa that sticks. Asks the Gemara of Reb Shimon, according to him, so in a case where Reuven married Rachel first, she is now considered Eishes Ach to Shimon. And only then did Shimon marry Leah. Once you tell me that the Isser Eishes Ach prevents Achos Isha from being applied, so all she's considered is Eishes Ach. Tis Yabim Yabumi, let her go to Yibam. She's a regular Yevamos. She doesn't have the additional shame, the additional label of the Erev of Achos Isha. There's no room for it. She's fully saturated. She's Eishes Ach. So when Reuben passes away, let Shimon be miyabim her. Answers the Gemara Achap. Amar Rav Ashi. We're not ignoring the fact that she's also his wife's sister. But there's no room for that to land. It's sort of hovering. It's sort of helicoptering and waiting to land. Isra Achos Isha mitla tali v'koy. The second Isra of Achos Isha is hovering over the Isha. It's waiting for a parking spot. Ipoka Isra Eishes Ach. So the parking spot is filled with the Isra Eishes Ach. Now once you're going to back out of that spot, come a Yibum situation, you'll tell me, well, Eishes Ach moves out of the way. That is the essence of Yibum, right? So once you pull out of the spot and you make room for the other one to land, also Isach is Isha v'chayil. The second Isach, Isach will come and land. And of course that's going to get into the way of Yibum. She's never vilkach leipaka. Therefore that prevents the Isach of Eishes from leaving its spot at all, from vacating its position, because in any case it's not going to end up being an ordinary Yevamos. She'll become Asur else on account of Achos Isha. So everything stays in place. Interesting kasha, right? So if we just reckon with the first Issa, in this case it's Eishes Ach, let her go Yibum. The answer is because once she'll lose the Issa of Eishes Ach on account of Yibum, suddenly the other one lands. So in any case, she'll never be Yibum enabled. So at this point we figured that Rabbi Yossi holds Isur Chalal Isur. So in a case when she's both Eishes Ach and Achos Isha, when it was over with her, we'll have to bring 2 karbanis, 2 chatos. Because we hold of Isur Chalal Isur. Is that so? V'sav Rabbi Yossi Isur Chalal Isur. One Isur can apply to the other. But Tanya, listen to this price. Avar Avera Sheish Bashtei Mises. A fellow did an Avera, which entails two ancient, 2 Mises Bezdin. Rashi says, let's say, Chamaisai, a mother-in-law who happens to be an Eishes Ish. Now the Einish for Chamaisai is Shreifa, death by burning. Eishes Ish is Chanek, a lighter form of death. So let's say he lived with an Isha as married. She happened to be also Chamoisi and also an Eishes Ish. Nidan bechamura. So we apply the more severe form of punishment. As she says, this is Shreifa. Rabbi Yossi, no, not necessarily. Sometimes he can get the lighter punishment if it came first. Nidan bezik harishayna haba alav. We apply the einish that's related to the first Isser that arrived first. What does that mean? V'tanya, we explained as follows. We apply the first Isser that arrived. Chamaise, let's say she first was his mother-in-law. V'nas is Eishes Ish, and then she got married. So this woman was his mother-in-law, and when he married her daughter, Rashi says she was not married anymore. The mother-in-law was an almana, she was a widow. So Chamoisoi arrived first, right? And then Vanasa says Eshes Ish. Then she remarried. She acquired a new title, a new label. She became an Eshes Ish. So this fellow who doesn't have air with her is guilty of both offenses. But Nidan b'Chamoisoi, which Einish is applied? The streif on account of Chamoisoi, because that was the first one in the ring. Now Tosfos points out that all agree in this case that he gets streifa because regardless that's the most severe punishment. Okay, so that's pashut. Here comes the chiddush of Rabbi Yossi. We apply this formula even if it results in a kula. Eshes ish v'nasas chamoisei. Let's say this woman was first an eshes ish, and then she turned into his mother-in-law. Right? So she was married, and then this fellow married her daughter. So she acquired a new label. On top of being Eshes Ish, she became his mother-in-law. Eshes Ish carries a chenek, a more lenient punishment. Chaimoisei carries streifa, more severe. So which one is he guilty of? Which one will be applied? The Nidoim Eshes Ish, he gets the more lenient form of Einish, the one that pertains to an Eshes Ish. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi explains, it's the first Isser that we're interested in. In this case, the Eshes Ish arrived first. She's saturated with that Isser. There's no room for more. As far as this fellow is concerned, he's only guilty of Eshes Ish and not Chamoisei. Clearly, Rabbi Yossi does not subscribe to the concept of one Isser being applied to the other. So why is it that by us, in the case of the Isha having two labels, Eshes Ach and Achos Isha, Rabbi Yossi says he is Chayv on account of both. Amar Bavo, although typically, Ein Isser Chalal Isser, here it's different. We have some exceptions to that rule. Moed Rabbi Yossi agrees. Be'isr Moisef. When the second Isser, although it arrived second, will actually enhance and add to the first Isser. So within this object, within this item, the Isser will get enhanced on account of the second event, on account of the second reason. So perhaps let's take a look at Rashi, who will explain this for us. It says Rashi on top, Omar Rabbi Avo, Moed Rabbi Yossi, B'Yisr Moisef. Now, what are we trying to answer? What problem and concern are we trying to address? We had a kasha. We had Reuven and Shimon married to two sisters. Reuven to Rachel, Shimon to Leah. Now, Shimon has two reasons to keep away from Rachel. A, Na'achos Isha. He's his wife, Leah's sister, and two, he's his brother's wife. She's his brother's wife, Eshes Ach. Rabbi Yossi seems to say that this fellow is guilty of two offenses if he interacts with Rachel. And the question is why? One, she's usher on account of, let's say, being his sister-in-law, on account of being his wife's sister, right? Say Shimon married Leah first, Rachel turned into his wife's sister. Once she has that Isser, she's saturated. There's no more room for more Isurim. So then when his brother Reuven marries Leah, and marries Rachel, you can't say, well, another Isser was introduced. Aside from Rachel being Shimon wife's Leah's sister, she is also his brother's wife. There's no room for that. We're trying to answer that question. Says Rashi, Omer Ravo, Moed Rabbi Yossi B'Yisr Moisef. At times, the second Isser will land. B'Yisr Moisef Shu Chal Al Isser. Keep going. Isser Eshes Ach. The Moisefu. The second Isser, the Isser Eshes Ach, actually is called Moisef. What does that mean? Initially, when Shimon married Leah, Vizu Pnuya, and at that point Rachel was unmarried, Nesra Alav, Mishma Achos Isha. At that point, she became Asr on Shimon on account of being his wife's sister. Umeteres l'chol echa, but she's still mutter to Reuven, to Levi, to Yehuda, all of Shimon's brothers. No reason why not, right? So it was a very specific personal Isser between Shimon, who was married to Leah, between Shimon and Rachel, who was his wife's sister. But now when Rachel marries one of these brothers, she marries Reuven, Ne'esra al kulon mishum eshes ach. Her Isser, horizon, expands. She's now Asr to all the other brothers. To Shimon, to Levi, to Yehuda. She's considered their Eshes Ach. A totally new phenomenon. A totally new realm has been introduced. So this Isha, this Rachel, the subject of our discussion, her Issa has now expanded. Has a far-reaching effect. She's now Asr not only on Shimon on account of being his wife's sister, she's Asr to Levi, to Yehuda, to all the brothers on account of her having married Reuven. Umigu, listen to Rashi, because, since, umigu dechayel shem eshes ach Allah, legabe shar echab, shoysu mutaris lahem. Since this next step, marrying Reuven, created an Isser on her, relative to the other brothers, to whom she was mutter up until this point. So this event actually generated Isser, applied Isser to her with respect to other people. That Isser took hold, took effect, and therefore it affects Shimon as well. You can't have two Isserim landing on you, but if the second Isser isn't specific to you, it includes other people. It's an expanded Isser, which will affect many other people. So once it is activated for them, it affects you as well. Even though you already had a pre-existing Isser with Rachel. She was your wife's sister. But no, now she gets a new title. She's been relabeled Eshes Ach, brother's wife. Because that Isser took effect and was an effective Isser with respect to the other brothers who were mutter to her up until that point. And since it is chal for them, it is chal for him. Chal nami Hashem hazel legabe didei, va'af agavada asir alei v'kaim. Even though Rachel had a history with Shimon, she was already answered to him on account of the other Isser that came first. But once the second Isser arrives with respect to the other brothers, it affects Shimon as well, and now he is guilty of two offenses. There are two Isurim between himself and Rachel, wife's sister and brother's wife. So in the case where Shimon married Leah first, Rachel turned into wife's sister, Achos Isha, number one. And then she married Reuven, which generated a broader Isser with respect to the other brothers, to Levi, to Yehuda, to Yisachar, who may not involve themselves with Rachel because to them she is an Eshes Ach, brother's wife. The Chiddush is, this Isser will now be applied to Shimon as well, and he will end up with two Isurim with Rachel. Aval, but in the other way, Aval Eshes Ish v'Nashes Chamoisei. But in a case where she was first, I'm getting back to the Brisa here with the Mises here. In a case where she was first Eshes Ish, right, and then she turned into his mother-in-law, you can't apply this formula. Initially, she was asur to anybody because she's a married woman. And then Nasa Zez Bita, this fellow married a daughter. That Isser can't be added to the Isser Eshes Ish, which was all-encompassing. The next Isser is not something which can include other people. It's not an enhanced Isser. It's not an expanded Isser Denema. In which case we can say Migu de Chayil Alayu, since it applies to them, Leichel Name Alei de Hayu will apply to the son-in-law. You can't do that. But the other way around. The Chamoise V'Nasis Eshes Ish. But if she was first his mother-in-law and then turned into an Eshes Ish, certainly you can apply this formula. Vada Isser Moisifu. That's called Isser Moisif. You know why? Shemetchila Asur Lazeh. Initially, when she was just his mother-in-law, it was a very specific personal Isser between him and her. Which allowed her to marry other people. Then what happened? She turned into a married woman. She gets a brand new expanded Isser on account of everybody who's Isser in her. And since it's activated for them, it applies to him too. Since it applies to them, it applies to him as well. So Rashi is explaining how this formula is compatible with the Bryce that we just learned. Raisa says, if she starts off as an Eishes Ish, and then she turns into his mother-in-law, he's only guilty of Eishes Ish. Why? So Rashi says because Eishes Ish is an all-encompassing Isser. It applies to all people in the world. So even then, when he marries a daughter and she turns into Chamaisa, no, Chamaisa has no room to land because Eishes Ish is an end-all Isser. Chamaisa won't really add anything with respect to her and other people, and therefore it can't add anything to her with respect to himself too. Therefore we treat her like an Eishes Ish. Okay, that explains that price. But bottom line is, getting back to our suit. Sister-in-law, brother's wife. Now we can understand what happened here. If she was first his wife's sister, and then she married his brother as well, which resulted in creating a brand new expanded Isser with respect to the other brothers who can no longer relate to her because she is their brother's wife. So that event has an effect on Shimon as well, and she now has 2 Yisurim to him. Asks the Gemara on the top line, Teinach, that explains that case that you described. When Shimon married Leah first, in which case Rachel turns into his wife's sister, and then Reuben married Rachel. Sure, it works. Since that second event, marrying Reuben, enhances the Isser, expands the Isser to the other brothers in the family. It will affect an Isser to Shimon as well. He's also included in the Isser. It's now a broad and expanded Isser for everybody and him as well. Well, let's say it happened the other way around. Right? We were discussing 2 possibilities of what happened. Shimon marrying first. Okay, that works. But let's say Reuben married first. He married Rachel first, in which case Rachel is now also to all brothers equally because she is their brother's wife. And then, and only then, did Shimon marry Leah. My Yisur Moisef Ika. How can you apply the concept of Yisur Moisef? There was no new Isser that arrived that affected anybody else except for him. When Rachel married Reuben, she was all the brothers' Eishes Ach, right? She was also to all his brothers because she's their brother's wife. Now when Shimon married Leah, Rachel's sister, Rachel's trying to become his wife's sister, right? We're trying to add that Isser. That's not an Isser Moisef, that's a very specific personal Isser between him and her. So in that situation, why does Rabbi Yossi consider her a double Isser? Perhaps he'll say, here as well it's going to work. Why? Migu de Itzer Bekula Achvasa will apply the concept of Koilel, not Moisef. Moisef is where there's a new expanded Isser applied to the item itself. Like the Isha is considered the subject of the Isser. And in the case of the Moisef that we just explained, she acquired a new Isser to the other brothers, and therefore on account of that it includes him as well. Okay, but in this case, that wouldn't apply. But perhaps a different formula can be applied, called Koilel. So again, what happened was, Reuben married Rachel. Rachel is now an Eishes Ach to all the brothers in the family. All-inclusive Isser. And then Shimon marries Leah. So we want a new Isser to arrive. Achois Isha should be applied. Why? Migud Itzer Bekula Achvasa, because this most recent event of marrying Leah actually generated a new Isser. Between whom and whom? Between Shimon and all of Leah's sisters. Right? So there was another aspect, a new aspect of the Isser that arrived that wasn't there before. So perhaps his marriage to Leah can add an Isser on Rachel. Why? Again, because the marriage to Leah did create new Isurim between himself, between Shimon, and the other sisters. All Leah's sisters. So perhaps it should include Rachel as well. Since it affects the other sisters, Sarah and Bilhah and Zilpah, all of Leah's sisters, perhaps we'll just include Rachel as well. Does that work? So again, you can't apply a double Isser on the same person, but if that Isser is an expanded Isser that includes other people as well, that affects others, perhaps it can include that first party as well. And in this case, by marrying Leah, he becomes Asr on Sarah and Bilhah, all of Leah's other sisters. Perhaps it's going to apply an Isser and include Rachel into that Isser as well, although she already has a pre-existing Isser on account of being his brother's wife. Hi Isser Koilahu. That's not called Isser Moisif. It's called Isser Koilah. It's a different realm. And that doesn't work. Now it might be very nice to see the Rashi here, a short Rashi, where he illustrates the difference between Isser Moisif and Isser Koilah. That's around 2/3 down the Amud. I'd say it's around 15 lines before the Rashi widens. It's a very short Rashi. Isser Moisif. He explains Isser Moisif and Isser Koilah. What is the fundamental difference between both of these terms? Isser Moisif, says Rashi, is Kisha Isser Moisif ala chaticha la Isra al Misha Materis Olav. Moisif means that the second Isser will actually expand, enhance, add Isser to this chaticha, this item. The Isha, in our context, that's the subject of the Isser. So the man may not engage with the woman. She's become the cheftza, the chaticha, the Isser. So if the second event adds, expands Isser to this chaticha, then it affects everybody. So this refers to the first case we discussed. Shimon married Leah first, which resulted in Rachel being his wife's sister. That's one Isser, a personal Isser. And then when Rachel went on to marry Reuven, it became Isser Moisif, because many, many more people were included in the Isser on this chaticha. Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, they all became Asr on Rachel on account of Reuven's marriage to her, because she is now their brother's wife. And once that happens, it can affect Shimon as well, even though he had a pre-existing Isser with this chaticha, with Rachel. But Koilel means, Isser Koilel means, she Isser Chal al chaticha is acheris. It's not that the chaticha, the Isser, the Isha that we're dealing with, her Isser expanded and applies to more people, and therefore can include everybody. Can include even the initial fellow who was already Asr in her. No, Isser Koilel means totally different. It means that the new event, the new reason, the new Isser is a catalyst to include other chatiches, in this case other women, will be affected by this most recent event. And you want to say, well, on account of the other women that got affected by the most recent event, we should also include this Isha. That's a Chiddush. We're going to drag this one together with the other women and say, just like the event will affect other items, it's going to affect this one as well. That we don't say. What's an illustration of that? The most recent discussion we had. We had Reuven marrying Rachel first, who now becomes Eishes Ach to all the brothers in the family. And then Shimon goes and marries Rachel's sister Leah. So you want to suggest that Rachel gets another Isser. Which Isser? Achos Isha. What do you mean? She's already Asr. Isha Zach. Isser Koilel. Because by marrying Leah, Shimon is now Asr on Sarah, Bilhah, Zilpah, all of Leah's sisters. All the other chatichas become Asr, and perhaps we'll drag Rachel along and say, well, we'll include her in the Isser as well. That you don't do. So we're stuck. Why does Reb Shimon apply one Isser on top of the other in this case? Elam Arava, says the Gemara, you're right. When it comes to Einish, when it comes to penalizing him, he will not get a double punishment. Ma'ala ani olav, I consider him, kilu asar shtaim, as though he did two Isurim, but really, ve'enu chayv al-achas, he's only guilty of one. V'chen ki asar Ravin, he said in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Ma'ala ani olav kilu asar shtaim, I consider him as though he did two Isurim, ve'enu chayv al-achas, but of course he's only liable for one. So Manas Kavina, what's the point of speaking about the fact that he did two? The cover ben Rishayim Gmurim, as Rashi brings, based on the Gemara Sanhedrin, we're careful how we bury somebody. A Rasha near a Rasha, a Tzaddik near a Tzaddik, and this fellow who transgressed many Yisurim, so although when it comes to punishing him, we can't apply more than one, but we put him with the Rishayim, because in fact he did two Yisurim. Ubi plukta. this question of whether a fellow who committed 2 Isurim, but is only liable to one, he's going to be buried bein Rishayim Gemurim, and this is actually the machlekes Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon. Right? Rabbi Yossi says we put him with the severe Rishayim, and Rabbi Shimon says no. We only deal with 1 Isser at a time. The Mefarshim say that Taisus points this out. Other Mefarshim explain that everybody agrees that bottom line is he did 2 Isurim. You can't be mechayev him for more than 1, but he did 2 things. Therefore, Rashi says, look, put him with the Rishayim. Put him with the Rishayim of his ilk, his type. But Rabbi Shimon says, look, the fact is you can only punish him for 1 thing, and as the Mefarshim explained, the fact is burying him with the Rasha is also a form of punishment. Interesting. Being koyev him near Rishayim is a tsar for him, for his nefesh, and therefore he says, if the halacha doesn't allow punishing for more than one transgression, you don't say isur chalal isur, so you can't punish him, even when it comes to burying him with Rishayim Gemurim, Rishayim of his type. Ueplukta, the machlekes that we had over here, and the conclusion that according to Rabbi Yossi, we place him with Rishayim Gemurim is actually machlekes. There's a machlekes as to what Rabbi Yossi really holds. In this case, would he be buried by Rishayim Gemurim or not? The Itmar is learned. Zor Sheshimesh B'Shabbos. So we're now in the Beis HaMikdash, where we may do avoida, even though it involves malacha. You can do so even on Shabbos, based on a pasuk. It says b'moy ado. You meant to bring the karbanos in the right time, even on Shabbos. Problem is, he's not a kohen. He's a zar. He's a foreigner. He's a Yisrael. So certainly he's guilty of doing avoida in a state of zarus, instead of being a zar. That's for sure. The question is he chayiv on account of Shabbos? Zar sheshimesh b'Shabbos. Rabbi Chia Aymer chayiv shtayim. He's guilty on both accounts. Number 1, he's a zar that does avodah. Number 2, who asked him to do the melachas associated with avodah on Shabbos? It's only meant for a kohen, not for him. Bar kapara Aymer no ein chayiv ala achas. He's only all responsible for the zor aspect, but not for the malacha aspect. Kafetz Rabbi Chia jumped up, so to speak, v'nishban, he swore in the name of ha'avodah, the name of the karbanos, a lashon of shvur. Kach shamatim Rabbi HaKadosh taught me shtayim. He's chayiv 2. Kafetz bar kapara likewise jumped up v'nishban, he said ha'avodah, I swear, kach shamatim Rabbi achas. Rabbi actually taught us that he's only chayiv 1. So they began a debate. Here's Rabbi Chia Lodin. Rabbi Chia started presenting his argument for chayiv shtayim. Shabbos l'kol nesra. We know that initially one may not do. There's an isser of malach on Shabbos for all, based on Mikdash or not. Kish hutru b'Mikdash, when the Torah was matter avoid in the Mikdash even on Shabbos, it's l'kahanim hutru relative to kehanim. L'kehanim hutru, it's only heter for kehanim. Well, the zar doesn't apply to a zar, so when he does malach on Shabbos in the base of Mikdash, he's chayav on account of Shabbos too. Yesh kan mishum zaris, yesh kan mishum Shabbos. He's chayav on account of being a zar, and did avoida, and on account of chilul Shabbos. His Bakapara Lodin. Bakapara began to present his statement, his argument. Shabbos l'kol nesra. Initially, Shabbos was a universalism. Kish hutra b'Mikdash. When it became mutter in the Mikdash, hutra became mutter, a blanket heter for anybody engaging in avodah. So, although he's not meant to do avodah, but you can't hold him accountable. Fact is, avodah related to karbonis and the Mikdash are mutter on Shabbos. And therefore, ein kan el zaros. He's only chayiv on account of zaros. This is one example of a machlekes. Zar on Shabbos, 2 or 1. We're going to have 3 machlekes. Here comes number 2. Ba'al mum sheshinimesh b'tumah, during a weekday. He's a kohen. Problem is, he has a blemish, a ba'al mum, unfit for avodah, and he happens to be tummy. Typically, when we bring a karban tzibur b'tumah, but he's a ba'al mum, he's not meant to do an avodah. So what happens now? Certainly he's chayiv for being a tummy and doing the avodah. What about? Certainly he's chayiv on account of a ba'al mum. He's not meant to do avodah if he's a ba'al mum. Is he guilty for doing avodah b'tumah? Machlekes. Rabbi Chia Omer chayiv 2, is chayiv 2. Bar kapar Omer and chayiv la'achas, only 1. Kavatz Rabbi Chia v'nishpo, he jumped up and he swore avodah kach shamati mi Rabbi. 2 is chayiv on account of both. Baal momentum. Kafatz Baal Kapara, V'nishban, he said, Havoida, Kach Shamatim. Rabbi, I heard from Rabbi Achaz, only Chayiv one. They started the debate. His Chol Rabbi Yechiel Lod, and he began to present as follows. Tuma Lakol Nesra. Typically, one may not bring any avodah but tumah, whether a korban tzibur or a korban yachid. Kishahot Mikdash, when the Torah was matter, bringing a korban tzibur but tumah in the Mikdash, it's l'kohanim t'mimim mutra. It only applies to a kohen who is suitable to do avodah, a kohen tam. L'kohanim t'mimim mutra, only for them. V'lo lebali mumen, it wasn't allowed for bali mumen. Therefore, you have two isurim being done. Yesh kan mishum bali mumen. He's chayiv on account of being a bal mumen doing avodah. V'yesh kan mishum tumah. He's chayiv on account of being tamei. He gets double malchus. Hislal bal kapara lod. Kapara began as follows: Tumah l'kol nesra. So tumah was a universal iser. Kshehutra mikdash, but one was mutter in English for the avodah. Hutra became mutter for all. So even though he's a Baal Mum, not meant to do avodah, fact is, avodah b'mikdash is mutter b'tumah. Ein kan ela mishum Baal Mum. He's guilty of doing avodah as a Baal Mum, but that's it. So in the second debate, we have the Baal Mum bringing a korban b'tumah. Is he chayiv 2 or 1? That's the machlekes. A third machlekes. Zar she'acha malika. So let's say the kohen was moilek. The bird, korban, he removed the head using his nail. So it's a malika process which is acceptable in the Mikdash. We consider it like a shchita, but it's not not a process applied to a non-korban bird. Now a zar, a non-kohen, goes into the Mikdash and he partakes, he eats this bird that was nimlak. What happens now? So number one, he did wrong was the fact that he's a zar and ate a korban. Is that it? Reb Chia Eimer Chayv Shtayim. He's guilty of 2 offenses. Bar Kapara Eimer Ein Chayv Alachs, only 1. Explains the Gemara. Kavatz Rabbi Chia v'nishpa ha'avoida. I swear in the name of Hashem's avoida. Kach shamatim Rebbe. I heard from Rebbe. Shtayim is chayv on account of a zar who ate a korban, and on account of something else as well. What else? He ate a nevela, an improperly shechted bird. So a kohen can eat a bird shechted in this manner, but not a zar, not a Yisrael. Kavatz bar kapara v'nishba. He says no. Avodah kach shamatim Rebbe achas. It's only chayv on account of being a zar. Here's Chol Rabbi Chia Lod. Rabbi Chia began to present his side of the debate. Nevela l'kol nesra. Typically, a nevela, unshechted animal or bird, is usher to everybody. This type of so-called shchita is not really a proper shchita in a non-migdash, a non-korban context, right? So when Malika was mutter in the migdash, it was a special exception, a special privilege for the Kehanim. Eitzel Kehanim Hutra. For Kehanim Hutra, only to them. Not for Yisrael, and therefore Yeshkan Misham Zaras. Number one, he did wrong was a zar eating a korban. Yeshkan Misham Malika. He ate a bird that was nimlak, which is tim like an avela. So he's chayv because of a zar and because of an avela. So the same bird, to this fellow was mutter, because he's a kohen, and he's eating it in the context of a kohen eating a korban in the Beis HaMikdash, and to the Yisrael, it's an avela. Unbelievable. Hischal Bakapar Lotin. Bakapar began to present his side of the argument. Nevela l'kol nesra. Sure, Nevela is also to everybody. Because Yehudra of Migdash. But when it became mutter in the Migdash by a bird that had malika, Hutra became universally accepted and mutter to everybody. Ein kan ela mishum zaras. Sure, he has no business eating a korban. He's a zar, but that's it. He's not guilty of an avela. So we have a total of 3 machlokes between Reb Chia and Bakapara. Is it 2 or is it 1? But Mike and Mifli, what's the real point and essence of their discussion? What does it revolve around? So although there was some discussion back and forth, but as the Mefarshim point out, that wasn't the ikar point of contention. What then is it? But Mike and Mifli. Be'isr koilel v'aliv der b'yesi. Here's another example of Isser Koilel. As we explained before, Isser Koilel is when the second Isser comes to include other items, and we want to drag this one along and have that second Isser applied to that item as well, despite the fact that it has a pre-existing Isser. Following Rabbi Yesi's Shita, question is how to interpret Rabbi Yesi. Rabbi Chia Savar, Rabbi Yesi be'Isser Koilo Machayev Tart. Rabbi Chia's opinion of Rabbi Yesi is that he holds him liable on two accounts, and as we explained, we bury him with the Rishayim Gemurim. So although he doesn't get two punishments, but he's considered a Rasha to the extent that he's buried together with the higher level of Rishayim, with the Rishayim Gemurim. And that's what Rabbi Chia meant when he said Chayiv Shtayim. Bar Kapara Savar Lo Mechayiv Al Achada. Whereas Bar Kapara holds that even according to Rabbi Yesi, he's only guilty of one, and we bury him with the lesser Rishayim. Now, how does this pertain to these three illustrations? Okay, Be'ez Hashem to be continued tomorrow. Okay, before we go, let's just do a quick brief chazor of today's daf. So we have the context of the Esther. Once the Yevamos becomes usher to a specific brother, whether she's forbidden, she's prevented from doing Yibum at all because he's the only potential candidate, or perhaps even if there's somebody else there that can do Yibum, the fact is once she becomes usher to this particular brother, even though that situation might change eventually, once usher, always usher. What about Isser Chal al Isser? Once something is usher, can it tolerate, can it accept and absorb another Isser? The answer is no. In the case of Isser Moisef, we had a question, and Isser Koilo, again the answer was no, but we have a question at a Machlekes regarding whether we bury him with Rishayim Gemurim on account of doing those two Isurim. And perhaps this would apply to Isser Moisef as well. And we concluded with the three examples of a double Isser, Machlekes between Bar Kapar or Bchia. First one was a Zar, a Yisrael who did Malacha for the Avodah and Beis HaMikdash, but it was on Shabbos. Is a Chayev for Zar and Shabbos, or only for Zar. We had a Kohen Balmum who did Avodah B'Tumah. He's Chayev because he's a Kohen Balmum, but is he also guilty of Avodah B'Tumah? And finally, a Zar who had the bird that had Malika. So he did something wrong because he's a Zar eating a carbon, no business eating a carbon, but is he over on account of Nevela? According to Rabbi, yes. According to Bar Kapar, no. And Be'ez Hashem will conclude our discussion in tomorrow's daf. All the best to you and much, much hatzlach.